Hey introverts, welcome back to my channel. So this week I want to talk to you guys about how to make a career path choice, right? And there's two career path choices that you can take, and it really boils down to whether or not you want to become or stay an individual contributor, or do you want to make that move to the management track, and then from there on you have supervisor roles, manager roles, director roles, and so on. So in this video, I want to talk to you about what it's going to take to get from one to the other. What are the pros and cons of moving in one career path or another, and what you can do in order to figure out, hey, is this the path that I need to be on? So I'll share with you some questions that you can ask yourself, and then there's an exercise at the end that I'm gonna have you go through that can help you figure out what is the best path for you to take. And so I want to make sure that, right, this is not about popularity. This is not about being loud. This is not about trying to be the boss. This is really about trying to understand where the give and take of your energy is, where the impact is on your life, and then what do you feel is a fulfilling career choice. So let's get into it. So first, we need to break down what an individual contributor is and what a manager is. So when you think about an individual contributor, you're going to think about something that is dedicated work for your responsibilities as part of being in a team. So this is going to be more in lines of like expertise in a particular field or area. This is going to be about delivering on individual projects or working in a team to deliver a project. This is going to be focused on working deeply in certain areas without necessarily exposure to other areas. So if there's something that you're really passionate about and that you want to focus on, maybe you went to a higher education institution to get a degree because you're really focused in that area. This is what these are some ideas or some topics about what an individual contributor is. But this is where like you really thrive in this area because you want to commit to a single project or a single area in your field, but that can still mean moving around to different companies within that same field. On the flip side, when you think about management, you have to take a step back because this is more in terms of how do you manage and or lead people? How do you communicate up and down the hierarchy in a business? How do you manage time, not only for yourself, but for your team? And how do you keep your team productive and deliver results that your upper management is looking for? So two completely different things. The one is not better than the other by any means. It's really about where you feel most comfortable, or depending on where you are now, what gives you the most amount of curiosity, right, in order to step into that. So is it continuing to excel in an individual contributor role, which could lead to more like a technical expert or a subject matter expert, or a consultant in many cases. And that would be, staying in one path, down one line, and get deeper and deeper in one industry or one subject within an industry. Management track is a lot wider. It can spread across multiple industries based off of the knowledge that you acquire. So it's all about where your interests are. In the next section, we'll talk about some pros and cons of each. All right, let's take the individual contributor section first, and let's talk about some pros and some cons. So some pros, right? You get to focus in one area and you can be dedicated to that one specific area. Two, you're probably gonna have less time spent in meetings and more time focused on those dedicated projects. And three is with an individual contributor track, there's oftentimes more clarity in where you can go, especially if you stay with one company for multiple years at a time. Especially in larger companies, they'll have a career track that is focused on what it looks like if you stay an individual contributor, and how you continue to grow within that company. We think about the other side, and when we think about possible cons in this scenario, is that you may hit your salary cap as an individual contributor, because you're eventually going to get to the point where if you start moving up high enough, you're going to become the only one in that particular field, especially if you become like a principal or a subject matter expert for that company, and you wind up maybe being the only one or two, right? There's no other comparisons for salary, so you may hit a salary cap. And then the last one I would say is for a con is if you stay an individual contributor and you stay on that let's call it a solo track. If you move up in a company, yes, there may be some opportunities for you to mentor other people, but likely you're going to be tied to projects that are specifically designed to benefit the company. And a lot of times you don't get the opportunity to train those that are up and coming beneath you, which is unfortunately one of the downsides of the industry. And we have a lot of people retiring that are these subject matter experts, and no one has picked up all of the knowledge that they have gained over their 30 or 40-year career. So just keep that in mind as possible pros and cons of becoming or staying an individual contributor. All right, so let's talk about management tracks, some pros and some cons. So some pros, you're gonna have influence over teams and over projects. So you can, depending on where you are in your management track, if you're a project manager, this is a little bit more focused on individual projects, influence over projects. If you are more of a people manager, you're gonna have influence over how teams perform and what they do and their setup and the results that they carry. So of course, there's multiple different areas of management, but I'm gonna try to boil it down into something that's a little bit easier to understand and digest, so it can help you make quicker decisions. So the next one is the opportunity to mentor and develop others, because if you're in a management role or a leadership role, you're going to be challenged to have not only build a team underneath you, especially if you're joining a new group or maybe even a startup, or if it's an established company that's starting a new division. If you're in that management role, you're going to be responsible for building a team. And when you build a team, you want that team and those that you train to eventually become better than you, because you want others with different expertise in different areas to come together and build a team that is highly productive and ultimately is a source of generating revenue for the company. So there's a lot of pride in developing individuals in order to become either excellent individual contributors or maybe eventually other managers. Okay. The third pro is, because in management, and I mentioned this briefly before, you can stay in one industry and have a management experience. But one of the great things about being in management is you can take that skill set, that expertise that you developed in one company or one industry, and then move to a completely different industry, because a lot of industries have, team managers, people managers, project managers, and then you can go on to, directors of different groups, whether it's people or it's product, and then that can lead to, vice presidents and presidents and so on within a company. And those skills are highly transferable. So some cons with management, especially for us introverts, which is something we really have to think about, is that because we are not only managing teams of people, we're also managing up the hierarchy and managing communications. And so whether it is a bunch of phone calls or virtual meetings or emails, that can be a huge energy drain for us introverts, because throughout the day, right, you can become completely depleted. Even if you enjoy your job, you can still be completely drained, and then you're going to need to have some recovery time. And a lot of times that could be solo time, which is okay. We just need to make sure that we have time for that, to hopefully every day, if not, some well-rested and recovery weekends. Another con is you're going to have less time for technical or hands-on work. because of your responsibilities as they grow, and you're going to have team members that you manage and lead. Those team members are going to be the ones that are going to be more technical and hands-on, and you're going to oversee that process and make sure that things are getting done, there's progress is being made, deadlines are being hit, but you may not be the one that is in that technical role anymore. So that's something to think about. And then the last con with being in management, especially when you have direct reports, is that you're going to be handling conflicts with personalities. When you're handling conflicts with individuals, right? You're going to wind up being a mediator. You're going to wind up being sometimes a therapist. You're going to be a mentor. And so there's just a lot of personalities that you have to manage. But the goal at the end of the day to become a successful leader or a manager is figuring out how these different personalities can work together, and then how they can excel in their individual expertise, but then they all can join and like contribute to the overall goal of whatever you're in charge of. So that's just something to think about. So next we're going to talk about what are some key questions that you can ask yourself in order to figure out which career path might be best. So what are those questions that we can ask ourselves to start going down this path of figuring out which path we want to take in terms of our career? So the first question to ask yourself is, do you get energy from managing and mentoring people, or from doing focused work alone? So if you have more energy at the end of the day, let's think about this in terms of total energy expenditure in a given workday. Where does that leave you at the end of that workday, and how much recharge time do you need? So that's a good thing to think about when we're trying to decide on career paths. 2 is, are you comfortable making decisions that will affect others, right? That's a huge responsibility to hold, especially in a management scenario. So if you're not comfortable making decisions that will affect others, whether that is the jobs, the projects they're going to work on, or it could even be if that person is ultimately going to continue working for you or working for that company. Third question is, do you enjoy communication heavy tasks, right? Do you like staying on top of emails and meetings? Like, do you like putting forth in information or compiling information, whether it's in documents or PowerPoints or whatever it is? Do you like sharing that information almost sometimes on a constant level? Or do you find that just absolutely draining? Like, that is the last thing you want to do. You want to focus on your work. I don't want to spend my days creating PowerPoints just to report that up to management. And the last question, which is probably, in my view, is the most powerful question that you can ask yourself. And it is what is my career goal? Do you want to influence through expertise, or do you want to influence through people? So take a second, think about it, even write this down. And then in the next section, we're going to talk about an exercise that you can do that will help clarify why I asked these questions. So here's the exercise. So for the next week, I want you to track your energy levels and write this stuff down. Keep it in a journal, keep it in an Excel spreadsheet, wherever you want to. But let's break it up into different categories. So 1 category is deep work. 2 is meetings. 3 is mentoring individuals. And 4 is emails. So take those 4 categories that kind of break up a typical workday for anybody, whether you're in management or you're an individual contributor. So throughout the week, every day, I want you to give each of those categories a score of 1 through 10. So 10 would be the most energizing. 1 is the least energizing. So throughout the week, every day, you're going to have those 4 categories. And those 4 categories are going to have a number tied to them. And at the end of the week, we're going to add up those numbers. Whichever one of those categories gives you the highest number, which means the most energizing, that's probably a path that you could see yourself going down. And that might be the best career path. So if you think about the questions and the pros and cons that we have already discussed, the numbers that you give those categories for an entire week will ultimately help you decide, which way you should go. And I do want to point out, as someone who's been on both sides, I've been in an individual contributor role for probably the first 2/3 of my career so far. This last third that I'm working in right now has been in a management role for a couple things, project management and people management in a combined fashion. And so I want you to know, as an introvert, there's no right or wrong answer. It's where you feel the most energized at the end of the day. What gives you the most joy? What gives you the most fulfilling purpose in your day-to-day? Because ultimately that day-to-day work that makes you feel that way, that makes you feel the most energized, is going to compound over time, and it's going to turn into more of a fulfilling career, even if we just think about it right now on a day-to-day basis or a week-to-week basis. And so you can switch career paths, right? There's no harm and there's no shame in switching that. If you want to try one for a few years and see how it goes, maybe it's not completely up to you. It could be up to the function of the company, or it could be where you live, or the types of jobs that are offered, or maybe a salary that you need to have or you need to achieve for the lifestyle that you've created, right? So those things are going to play an influence. But if we really just focus on the type of work that you do, right? What gives you the most energy? Let's start there, and then we can figure out the rest later on. So my takeaway from this video is I want all of you introverts out there watching to know that your introversion is not a limitation, right? Use it as a guide. That guide is going to help you figure out where you thrive and what choices you make feel natural and sustainable and even rewarding. Because that is our ultimate goal at the end of the day. That is how we decide what career path we want to take. This is how we decide where we feel the most fulfilled, right? The most complete. So if you found this helpful, hit the like button, subscribe, and comment below. I'm going to pin a comment just like I have been doing in my other videos to stir up some conversation. And if you think this video can help others, please share the video. And until next time, I'll see you.